Welcome, everybody, to a special edition of the Citizen Body Cast. This is a one-time special show that we put together because we're coming to you from Philadelphia, the city where the country started, as you all know, and it happens to be the birthplace of the citizen body as well, which we think has special symbolism. But it's also a very musical city. Philadelphia is known for certain acts that went national, but it's also known for a very big place where musicians come out of. So we brought together today actually three people you'll see on camera and a fourth person who's going to be behind the scenes, but he's a very important person. I'm going to let them all introduce themselves. But in full disclosure, the three you see on camera have actually played together in a band. I've been lucky enough to fill in for my friend here, Ash's band Love Cartel, and Dan was on bass and I was on drums. But all of us have played music all our lives, but we also have other endeavors and missions in our life, and that's kind of what we're bringing together in this podcast today. So I want everyone to just introduce themselves. Why don't we start with the gentleman on my right, Mr. Dan Drago.
My name is Dan. I'm the host of 25 O'Clock, Philadelphia music-centric podcast. Our tagline is Philadelphia's longest-running music podcast, we think, because no one has challenged us on that. And by us, I mean me.
This might be the time.
One can. 25 O'Clock is a Philadelphia music podcast. I've been interviewing Philadelphia artists since 2014. This year marks 10 years of the podcast. I've talked to hundreds of people, thousands of hours of tape, tons and tons of music. So I guess that's, as we go into this conversation about talking about music at the community level, I guess that's where my expertise comes in.
Great. Mr. Kernen.
Yeah, man. John, thanks for having me. My name is Ash Kernen. I am an intellectual property and entertainment attorney with a particular focus at the intersection of emerging tech and entertainment. But in a prior life and in a sometimes weekend warrior life, I still fancy myself as a musician, and every now and then I get to play with some great guys in the band Love Cartel. So happy to fill in on the law front as well.
And thanks for taking the time out, man. Mike Fioriglio, off camera, but very, very important to making this whole thing happen. Can we get a brief intro?
Yeah, sure. And first, I'd like to say thanks, John, for making this happen. This is really cool. I'm really happy you chose to use my space. This space has been a long time coming, and the fact that you chose to host this here, it means a lot to me. So, like you guys, I'm just a local musician, and I've got my hands on a lot of different things, musically speaking, music services, recording, engineering, lutherie, teaching, and I like to play music a lot myself. So this is a really good subject for us to communicate about.
Yep, and I can't thank really all you guys. I know you're taking time out from everything you've got going on, Mike. Dan, both you guys are. We took it seems like maybe 3 months just to have the time to come physically together. I kind of insisted on that because for my work with the citizen body, the human connection, and this might come up in our talk today about the humanization and rehumanization and dehumanization that, I've gone back and forth with you guys individually on, but it's nice to get all together. So I'm John Katrina, co-founder of the Citizen Body here in Philadelphia. And I am also a musician, but I'm trying to be a catalyst to build community. We're a think tank, but we don't like to be associated with actually the way that word is defined now because they tend to be public policy makers that are on a conservative or liberal side. We really actually like to think. So beyond the talking, which we'll obviously do today, it's the thinking that's underneath the talking. And I think Dan and his expertise with his podcast is going to walk us through this and help us moderate a little bit. So
I'd like to think of us more as a salon and less of a think tank. A salon in the old European way of thinking.
Already
we could also be
ideas.
the other kind
like
of salon too. I'm due.
I do need a haircut.
Yeah,
so,
Ash, I was going to talk to you about that. But yeah, no, thank you, John, for asking me to keep this on the rails. The funny thing that anyone listening to this, if we had recorded any phone call that John and I have had about this very thing over the last few months, we could fill multiple podcasts, which is just simply the contents of the phone calls.
Yeah. I thought we did it many times over already, but
We did, in fact. I don't know why I'm here.
Yeah.
Well, John, why don't you get us started? Like, we've circled around in sort of pre-production on this about what this is going to be about. We've arrived at things, discarded them, and things like that. But just sort of the general thing that we're here to talk about today is music at the community level, the regional level, the local level, if we will. I myself chafe against using the term local simply because I think that it can have connotations of being less than. That's just my opinion right there. But local is as good a term as any just to simply describe stuff happening right here.
Yeah, and I remember you saying that before, and I agreed with it at the time that there is, unfortunately, that human paradox of like small local. Also, you can't help it sounds like not successful.
Bespoke.
Yeah, not big time.
Quaint.
And that's I want to get deep into the philosophy, but you guys have to kind of keep it, in the real world.
At some point,
too.
we all have to go home.
But I think that what we're looking to do is, in the citizen body, we're interested in how people can use their power better. So I found through life, like, I didn't want to be a politician. I didn't want to be a political junkie. I didn't want to be an exercise fanatic. I didn't want to be, anything so extreme that it consumed my life. But if you don't know enough about politics, if you don't know enough about nutrition and exercise, and you don't do it to some minimal level, I think that you're actually abdicating your power to be healthy, to be use your citizenship in a way that gets you better leaders, better representation. And so when it comes to music, the question is, are we using the power, which there is in music, are we using it well, or is it falling into this same tendency for the commoditization, which empowers it economically? I mean, we see huge numbers in some of these shows, but are we using the power of the music itself to shape a kind of culture that makes people less, I'd even argue the mental illness is connected in some way. People go to music to get over heartbreak. People go to music to worship. People go to music to commune, and I think that, we do have a mental health crisis. We have an economic crisis. We have a political crisis. We're in a bad way. Music to me was always supposed to be some sort of spiritual elixir, where we went to protest, where we went to sing songs about reform and things like that, philosophy. But is it, I guess my big question, and bring you guys together and just kind of riffing off this now, is, are we using the full power of music? And if not, how do we do it?
I think that speaks well. So, John, in advance and at sort of all of our behest, I said, break this down into just some essentially bullet points of like, what do we want to talk about? And I'm just going to jump right into it because I think the ones that you came up with 4, and I think that they're very, very good. I think there's a lot to chew on in these things, and then also it kind of moves us in a direction because we could all spin our wheels about, what does it mean, man? Where are we as a people? And people have been doing that since the beginning of time, since the beginning of letting people get together and talk about what's going on. Like, that's been going on. But I want to jump into that first thing that you kind of gave us here to focus on, John. The idea of music following the same patterns as the rest of American culture. I want to say, like, American consumer culture. It's being commodified and consolidated solely to our detriment. That's your question here. Are we doing this? Are we selling and packaging it so much to the point that it actually is harmful and isn't good for us? Or are there hidden benefits to packaging and commoditization? I guess that's an interesting question to start with. Ash, what do you think?
Yeah, so interesting. Whenever I get on this sort of topic, I somehow always end up back at food. And not so much because I'm hungry, but because I think it provides a sort of illuminating analogy. And you asked, are there sort of benefits to that? Sure. I mean, the economies of scale, like if we're mass producing stuff, arguably these are economic drivers, which makes things more accessible and cheaper to people. But in the end, what's the true cost of that stuff? And as I've been engaging in this sort of conversation, particularly with the advent of artificial intelligence and its application in music, and the ease at which quote unquote music can sort of be proliferated at this point, we sort of look at its like, adverse effects and its benefits. And sort of to bring it back to the food analogy is right now I think we're at this inflection point where there's a struggle between the organic section in the store and the middle of the market sort of, processed. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Thank you. And they're competing for shelf space, right? And it's only going to get sort of more competitive as we go along. But in the end, I think that, consumers, I think that musicians tend to have, and people that come along in the process of making music, I think they tend to overemphasize the importance of the process to the end consumer. And we're self-important in that regard because so much sweat equity goes into it. Yeah. And the consumer, and that's a loaded term in of itself. At the end of the day, they're looking for the catharsis and the sort of kineticism to the music. So they don't really stop and question how one record gets made necessarily. Now, audiophiles do. People that are music nerds do. People that are like sort of, ardent fans of a particular band. Certainly.
Me, Ash. You can say
me. We do that. We do that. But is the average person doing that? I don't know.
I don't think so. No, but yeah.
Yeah, and I think, I go back to the barriers to entry falling to the production side of music, where all the way back to, you had this interesting storm that occurred, perfect storm that occurred in like the aughts or just about there, where DAWs and home production and the cost of that became much more accessible. And at the same time, there was a mass marketing move on behalf of the instrument companies, to sort of bring down to introduce consumer-oriented lines. At the same time, you had games like Guitar Hero, Rockstar, and DJ Hero, sort of proliferating the idea, this like, everybody, the everyman Rockstar type thing. And so between the two, it spurred on a lot of people and a lot of interest in the genre, which I think is generally a good thing, right? We want people to be, I'd rather you be making music than out in the streets doing, knucklehead stuff. Yeah. But at the same time, I think that was the start of this sort of move away from organic analog instrumentation. Not that we've had digital for decades. That's not necessarily what I mean, but sort of the ease at which things can be made in a DAW, in a loop, and the art of a lot of the old ways of producing music started to wax and wane. So all that to say, just to bring it full circle on the food side of things. Yeah, my apologies.
No, it's fine.
I think in the end, what we're going to end up having is you're going to have a slow food movement, and you're going to have at one end of the spectrum, you're going to have your sort of fast food drive-through type music where it's homogenized, it's mass produced. There's a team of writers. It's wholly organic.
If that,
if that's true, it could be completely done with AI in a box, and people are putting it out. That's right. And there will people that consume that, and they may or may not be your target demo as an artist. And at the other end of the spectrum, there are people that appreciate and desire farm-to-table music, if you will, and then everything in between. So I think ultimately, to get to the spoiler, that's where I think this thing shakes out. What happens in between is
so from that answer, I'd say, you're saying it does parallel it, but just like even food, there are some benefits to dark chocolate, highly processed. There's benefits to convenience of certain foods. There's benefits to sometimes being able to grab a protein bar. But if that becomes your sustenance, if that becomes your default, your everyday, maybe that's where we start to see, just like with food, the deleterious effects start creeping in if your diet is 100% processed. I mean, that's the way I kind of,
To speak to Ash's point, and this is where the music history nerd in me goes, and I'm going to get Mike to chime in on this too, because as a studio owner and a producer and all that, you can speak to this as well. The idea of accessibility, not only of the means of making art, but then also the distribution. Like those are the two things, and those things happened very, very closely together. You could record I'm not even talking about making beats on a laptop. I'm talking before that. You could plug a mic into a computer or into a 4-track tape recorder and make a record with your friends in a garage. And then with the dawning of the internet and streaming, and not even before streaming, just being able to have a MySpace, to have a Bandcamp or whatever, any of these things, you could put your music up, and suddenly, what do you need a record label for anymore? If 100,000 people download your thing off mp3.com, RIP the MP3 blog culture that used to live on the internet, right. That was a true democratization. Not true. There's no such thing as true democratization, but that was a very heavy democratization of the music thing. Bands were discovered out of their own practice spaces and bedrooms by other people, tastemakers, who were not looking for a market drive, who were not looking for financial, do you think we can sell 1 million units? Do you think we can get this band off the road and pack every room? It was, do I think this is cool? I'm going to share it with my other friends who thinks things are cool. Hey, look, enough people think this is cool. What if they came to our town and played? Take it back to the 1980s and the DIY punk rock scene. Take it back even before that. The idea that like now you can proliferate your art, and you don't need a record label. No one has to stake you because you just staked yourself. And I was curious, Mike, what you think about that, because you've been making records and playing for a long time. And people think that the biggest casualty of like home recording is like, well, no one's going to go to a studio anymore. But we found that's not necessarily true.
Well, I agree that that is true, that there has been casualties as far as people coming to the studio and getting their product done at a pro studio. But I also think there's opportunity out there in the world for people to release content in so many different ways. And that's one of the first things that I tell people. If you're on a budget, you want to try to make the most out of everything that you do, and whether it's releasing podcasts or content this way, or video content, or just taking your phone and putting it up whenever you're getting together with your bandmates. People love content, and as I do,
for better and for worse.
For better and for worse. And that is the one mistake that I think people make today, is thinking that they need this polished, perfect product before they release it to the world. People don't really care about that. They don't, like Ash said, people don't really care about the process so much.
It's just, does it hit them? Does it
exactly.
Work? Yeah.
And I think people need to take advantage of that.
Yeah. Because if you think about the first Nirvana album, Bleach, which was recorded for $600. But there was something in that record that the punk kids in the DIY worlds of where that band was touring in the late 80s and early 90s, something on that recording hit with them. And yeah, the drums sound janky as hell. And yeah, the guitars sound messed up. And his vocals maybe aren't mic'd as well as they would be later when Butch Vig was at the console.
But does anyone talk about that?
No, because like the performance of something like Negative Creep or something like that, just to use something specific, is powerful and bratty and just full on. Like if you were of an age and you were of a mindset and like that was going to work for you, whether it was recorded to be very general on a tin can or on a Neotech board, like who
just
cares?
Imagine if Nirvana was, if they were going through that process today,
and
in
someone
the world
said,
where everyone has a phone where they could just take video of everything they were doing. Who knows where it could have gone?
Yeah. But I think to speak to sort of John's first sort of focal point right here, I think we would all be in agreement that like the sort of the mass commodity, just the mass way that music is put out and pressed and pushed out to people would be positive in the way that it can reach a lot of people. Use the internet as that example right now. The four of us in this room could write a song in 30 minutes, record it in another 30, and have it up on the internet in an hour 5. We could do it. Now, does that mean that music is any good or not? No, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about how quickly can you distribute an idea into the marketplace? And the answer is now nearly instantaneously. You can do it live on, if you're streaming on Instagram or TikTok or
You
Facebook.
could be live streaming right now.
Yeah.
Oh, live streaming gives me agita because there's just too many things.
Live
that can
streaming
go wrong.
video, yeah. But I do want to say to that yes, the tool for everyone to self-publish basically are there, but you still talk about hundreds of thousands, even professional musicians that are frustrated that they can't make money on Spotify on streaming or whatever streaming platform. So it's like, yeah, you can get it out there, but you're competing with. There's not a place. It can happen. Like I was going to say, like in the MTV generation, like it was Duran Duran, and I forget. Like there's another kind of iconic band that pretty much is MTV is credited with being,
There's a lot of bands that were able to represent themselves visually through the art of music video. I think ZZ Top is an excellent example of that. Regional, kind of middle of the road blues band from Texas that did well. They opened for Cheap Trick, and they had a good following. And then they made these amazing narrative films and put them on MTV, and suddenly they were the biggest band in the world. Also, it helped that they could play and had something to offer. They were a seasoned group. They weren't a startup.
An image.
Yeah, they had the image.
But then MTV went away, and then you got, like you said.
Oh, it's still here, John. It's just absolutely unrecognizable to anyone of us in the
I
room.
thought it officially died at some point. I'm not sure.
Oh,
I thought
it's
I saw
there.
something.
We could pull it up on basic cable right now.
But when the internet took that over, then I don't know. Wasn't Justin Bieber like discovered initially by like?
He was a YouTube.
He was a
star.
YouTube
Right.
sensation.
There's stories that even that was set up.
Yeah, again, and you don't really know, but there are artists that break. I mean, even the guy that had the music hit recently, the song about Richmond and Richmond. I mean, he didn't ultimately. I don't know what happened to him eventually. He didn't parlay it into some big musical career, and God bless him if that's all he wanted to do. That's great, but he did reach the masses.
Yeah.
But I would say that's the exception. Even in MTV days, it's still the exception. There's still the mass market, which just like many things, writers, actors, like if you don't get into that industry of it, your chances of it really breaking are infinitesimal. So I guess part of where I want to kind of steer this is I sent a video to you guys. I don't know if you got a chance to see it, but about what to do to grow the music scene so that lightning in a bottle can potentially happen. She cited like Nirvana in Seattle. She said that wasn't planned; it just happened. She cited the Compton, the stuff that came out of California. Yeah.
Even before that, Dre,
maybe,
NWA, and all that stuff happening.
She
before
cited how these things became cultural like shifts, but they weren't necessarily planned. But that you should still plan, and went through some of the elements of how you can plan your music community. Yeah. I want to figure out today when we're talking is like sometimes that feels like a futile effort.
I think the thing that we're all concerned about is not even as a musician, because like, and this is not, I'm not trying to make myself feel better or worse. I don't even classify myself much as a musician anymore these days with a capital N. I can still play the guitar, like I didn't forget, but the things that I engage in, interviewing artists, championing parts of the community, offering myself as a sounding board is just another set of ears to give to a recording, another brain in the room when you're thinking about, we have a finite amount of resources as a small band. What do we put them at? Do we put them at PR? Do we put them at a live tour rig? Things like that. That's kind of how I feel myself functioning more than like as a musician. Long gone are the days, I think, of any of us in this room thinking that we're going to, quote unquote, make it, whatever that is. But I have found an equal amount of satisfaction from being on the periphery.
Yeah.
And helping grow a community, or at least just being part of one.
Participation.
I just want to participate in it. Yeah. Ash and you and I have talked about this so many times about like, I'll give a great example. Last Wednesday, I was at Johnny Brenda's and saw a regional Philadelphia artist named Brittany Ann Tranbow, who's an amazing songwriter, country musician. And the place was wall-to-wall packed with musicians, writers, and fans. And it was that moment. I stood in that room and I'm just like, I kind of want to stand in this room perpetually forever. Like, I want to be a part of this forever. A room where we're all celebrating someone, but we're all enjoying each other's company, catching up, socializing, enjoying great music, enjoying amazing performances. And in that moment, I was like, this very well may be what heaven is to me, which is in a room with someone awesome playing, surrounded by community members.
So, but that I think of that as real quickly. Just examples. Her name is Brittany Ann. What's the last name?
Brittany Ann Tranbo.
Tranbo.
Yep.
Does she have a path to be commercially viable, just to make a living? Sustained.
I would have to. We would have to invite Brittany on the program to talk about that.
That's the next question.
Yeah.
Is
But in that moment, can we count that room, that full Johnny Brandis room at 200, 250 cap on a Wednesday night, a gathering of all these different people from different bands, all kinds of people too. She definitely her music lives very much in like this sort of like queer folk and country community, but there was heteronormative men, heterosexual men, queer couples of all kinds, trans people, every kind of person was in this room. And it was like an example to me of, this is one artist that can bring together all these people organically through sweat equity, through just making music for many, many years. And to me, like, that was an example. And I knew we were going to get together and do this. And I thought to myself, like, you have to talk about that night just a little bit, because not only was it great for me socially, I could see a bunch of people, have drinks with friends, just really enjoy community. It was like a real testament. And we discussed it with each other when someone said, oh man, isn't it amazing what Brittany can bring all these people together. I said, it is amazing. And I'd say 90% of the credit of tonight goes to her. I said, but the other 10% goes to us for showing up and engaging.
Yeah, and the inherent in your question necessarily is this sort of old paradigm, which I think is, and it's not a knock or anything, but I think it's, the reality of it is it's antiquated. There was a point in time for many decades where it was binary. You either made it or you didn't.
Yep.
You either had a record label or way of distributing, or you didn't.
You went on tour or you didn't.
Yeah. And that's the challenge. I got to keep breaking I got to break my clients down a little bit, the spirit a little, to build them back up, and just say, you got to get that illusion out of your head. Like, it's almost a fantastical world. Taylor Swift, God bless all she's done for the industry writ large. And I know a lot of people are big fans of her, but I mean, she is such an anomaly.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody at that level is so anomalous.
Yeah.
That is not 99.9 whatever percent of working musicians.
There's a lot of zeros in that decimal. Yeah.
And so, but there is a world today in which you can exist and quote unquote be successful in a more modest fashion, but yet, I think it's about defining your goals, number one, right? So like, what are your goals as a musician? If you want to be a world famous pop star, okay, well then the mountain is high.
Bring money.
Yeah. And have a machine behind you.
Well, and pay, and you have to pay that machine.
Yeah, and by the way, be careful what you ask for, because I do those deals and I know I understand the usury that goes into them, and not that I'm advocating that we should perpetuate those. As a matter of fact, I've made a career out of pushing back on those type of deals. But at the same time, you lose you no longer own your own means of production. There's a whole thing, there's prices to pay with getting at that level. But at the same time, there is a world in which exists, and you hear a lot of people talking sort of about, the 100 or the 1,000 super fans or whatever. And those people can drive. If you get 1,000 true hardcore fans that will spend $100 in net income, after all said and done, a year, that's a pretty good existence. That's a hell of an existence to get paid to write music, to write music and play music. I'm not saying musicians aren't entitled to that and much more, but it's this binary mindset that can still pervade a lot of well-intended but naive, sort of younger artists on the come up or whatever. Can be destructive or counterproductive. And I always try to show them and demonstrate, like, there's a world in between, and it exists along the spectrum, and it's about meeting your sort of desires, not the next person's or some ideal that you see on TV, because, by the way, that's almost unreachable, statistically and empirically speaking.
Well, this is an interesting question for Mike and Ash, because I've experienced this as well. When you go to speak to people or you tell people what to do, Ash, you're an entertainment lawyer. Mike, you're a producer. I am what I am. And people ask you, hey, who have you talked to, worked with, recorded that's quote unquote famous? And my answer nearly always is, well, my version of someone that I was really excited to work with might have nothing to do with what the general public thinks of as famous. I have 9 different ways to dodge that question in a way where I can both make the asker not feel like an idiot, but also be like, you're asking the wrong question here. The question is like, who did I work with, or what were situations I was in? And I'd ask you, Mike, the same question. What were like recording situations where you're in where you felt successful? It could be the person you were working with. It could be how you did it. It could just be the power of the performance or that particular day. Because I bet you the answer, it won't be anyone that most people have ever heard of.
No, I don't. The majority of people don't get the opportunity to work with commercially famous artists.
Or for you as a mid-level producer, you're not working in a big, giant studio like Ocean Way or something like that. You've been piecing together your career the way you have for many, many years. Who's someone that you were just so flippin' stoked to work with?
Well, I would say it comes down to projects that you feel prideful about, and the music that you are excited to release to the world that the artist is also excited to release. And I think it is important for for artists, for anyone involved in music, to release as much as possible and to try to release stuff that you're proud of and in different ways, because people consume content in so many different ways, whether they're listening to music on Spotify or they're watching videos on YouTube or they're listening to the radio in the car. I think it's our job, radio DJs, it's their job and everyone's job in the industry to help get the music out there.
And it used to be like whole radio stations in major markets were run largely at the whims of the programming department, which can... That's a pendulum that can swing back and forth right there. You can either ally solely with corporate interest right there and just do exactly what the record label says. Well, this one, we're working this one. Or you can be the example. Helen Light told me this story in the 70s when she was working for, it might have been WIOQ or something like that. Tom Petty's first record was a flop. No one cared. They were pushing it to radio. They were out there. They were playing. They had some good opening slots. But every time they played him in Philadelphia, the phones lit up. A nobody. No one knew who he was. So Helen was talking to their record rep once from the label. And he said, yeah, we're having a hard time, kind of shopping this Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers to all these markets. And she said, well, keep doing what you're doing, because every time we play that song, the phones go crazy. And all it did was take a little longer for a band like that to catch on. But back in that... My example of that is like back in the day, a radio station could just rally around and be like, we don't care if it's, if it sells. We care that when we play it, people say, oh man, what's that?
But see, and that's where I talk about the consolidation. I mean, there was a DJ that basically is credited with breaking Billy Joel here in Philadelphia. Do you remember, was it Pierre Robert? Or was it?
It might have been Pierre, but that was the power back in the 1970s that radio really had. And of course it was bastardized on so many levels, payola and all that the government had to get involved to be like, okay, you can't actually do business like that. And then flash forward a couple decades, they did the same thing with the pharmaceutical industry.
There's always a game. There's always a gaming system, right? And I'm glad you brought up the pharmaceutical, because that's my point. Is like, okay, I agree with everything you said, Ash, and what you guys are saying. But what I want to know is, how do we, and one of the big things that she cites in this TED Talk. And forgive me, I don't have her name at the tip of my tongue, but
well, you put the link in the show
put the
notes.
Link up. And it is leadership, and it's like, how do we create a local music culture? And to me, this ties into, I became interested in an artist called Adia Victoria. It was about 4 or 5 years ago. I went to see her twice at Johnny Brenda's. Brilliant shows. I really enjoyed it, but it came from the fact that I was actively seeking music outside in the grocery store. I was saying, let me try out this new fruit that I never tried before. Let me try this new vegetable in the produce section. I wasn't going, for the Jiffy Pop and the Cheerios and like all the, packaged stuff, the marshmallows and all. I was looking for something healthy. And on NPR, they had her, and I liked the one song. I listened to her album was called Beyond the Bloodhounds. I thought it was brilliant. It's gothic blues.
Cool.
And I have since didn't enjoy her subsequent work as much, but I was in Johnny Brenda's too, and I was in Johnny Brenda's like enjoying, and it was kind of hilarious because she's a young African American artist singing Gothic blues, and everybody in the audience was a 50-year-old white guy.
Well, I think that goes all the way back to the 30s and 40s and into the blues in England and in this country at the beginning of classic rock. You would see Muddy Waters kind of like on his way down and playing these coffee houses. There's just nothing but white people.
Yeah.
And it was, that's a whole other discussion to have right there.
But the point was, like, I felt like, okay, that power citizen thing I call it, I'm shopping small because I'm giving my money to Johnny Brenda's. Yep. Right. As far as I know, Ash, they're not controlled by.
They are not. They're privately owned by two people.
So like you were saying, Dan, I'm accomplishing keeping money in the community. A lot of it's I'm paying cash, which keeps the big bank transactions out. I did have to get the ticket through, I think, Songkick or something like that. But you know, yeah. And then I was enjoying a small artist, supporting a small artist. I bought one of her little merchandise things, and of course the admission to the show, and the social aspect Dan mentioned. That's a really big part of it. And I also felt she actually came down and danced in the crowd a little bit. I loved small classes when I was in college. I loved the human interaction of teaching. As my classes got bigger, I didn't learn as much and I didn't enjoy it as much. I never was a huge, big concert guy. I enjoyed, there was something missing. The nutrients seemed to be getting diffused or something. Like I felt it was less nutritious the bigger the, not that you can't ever have big shows. I mean, again, the diet thing.
I think that's the goal for some artists actually is to have very big shows. Of course, big is relative, right?
It is, but what about a sustainable career? And this is what I was trying to get to is how does is it Brenda? Brandy?
Brittany Ann.
How does she, what is that path and how do we help create a path for these people? Your artists, Mike.
I would say when you're at a show, buy their merch.
Yep.
Yeah. Buy their album, buy the hard copy of their album.
Buy T-shirt, stickers, whatever.
That is the number one way that you can support artists. And that is a mistake that many artists make. They don't even provide merch or a hard copy of their album often. They just want to release their music on Spotify and streaming sites. And I can't even to release it on Bandcamp where you can buy the album for $10 and you have a downloadable album. Yeah. People tend to forget that is an opportunity where they can actually make real money from stuff that people can hold on to and have memories, and it's very important.
And also make money on the thing that you want to do. The famous example is DC punk band Fugazi never sold a single thing at the merch table that wasn't a record, a CD, or a tape. No T-shirts, no stickers, no posters, no nothing. When I was in bands, I fought against the T-shirt thing too because I said, what did we get into this for? Are we T-shirt makers and T-shirt sellers? Ian MacKaye said it best. And of course, there are arguments about how much money they left on the table because they did become quite a popular band. But Ian MacKaye used to say, he's like, we make records and we play shows. Everything out, like we don't do those other things. Now, of course, if you're trying to make a couple bucks out on the road and you can sell someone a $1 sticker or a $5 bandana or a keychain and it reminds people of your band, I don't subscribe fully to what I call the Fugazi approach. But when you sell records to people, they go home and they listen to them because you bought it.
One of the suggestions that I try to make to bands that I work with is to make business cards with a QR code where people can access your album and your music.
You remember
in a form
download
that they
codes?
can buy. Yeah, download
the little
codes.
plastic cards
Absolutely.
With the codes. I'm glad we've gotten rid of that. Now the QR code is universal. Or you put the QR code in a big stand up on the merch table. Yeah.
So important to give that.
Put it on the bass drum head.
Absolutely.
I think that's getting a little much right there. But
call your band.
I don't know why I immediately had a gut reaction of like, no, don't do that.
No, you're not wrong because inside the diamond is sacrosanct. Keep the advertisements on the outside. Yeah.
Well, it's like the Neil Young thing when they played arenas and they made them cover up every single ad in like in a hockey arena. He's like, we're not here to talk about Pepsi and Budweiser. We're here to share. We're here to share a night of music together. Yeah. And not every band has the clout to do that. And I don't even think Neil Young does it anymore. But it's what a statement. Just the symbol of that right there is amazing.
But I want to go just one step deeper, which is there's a presupposition in the setup, which is that the fans are in the building. And that in of itself is not to be taken for granted anymore.
Yep, absolutely.
And see, that's wherein lie. As I'm thinking about how do you create
especially in this
a
economy,
vibrant ecosystem, and that starts local but has the potential to elevate you up to whatever level you want to go. But the real truth, the real truth here is that we are fighting for our lives in an attention economy, right? And there, anecdotally, I was at Dorney Park the other day with my little guy who just loves it and drags me there all the time. But I was talking with another mom, who chaperoned her 8th grade kids' class over there, and she said, I just couldn't believe it. The entire class had no interest in going on rides. They were just sitting on their phones the entire time we were here. And that was sort of like, that crystallized this problem that we have at the moment, this competition. And believe me, at the end of the day, I feel like the onus is on us, either as the old heads in the industry or even as the performers and stuff. We have to be our own best missionaries for this ecosystem that we want, but we got to deliver too, because we got to realize we're not dealing with captive audiences anymore. Their attention is being pulled in 13,000 different ways. And by the way, almost all of those other ones are like the quote unquote high sugar, sort of immediate dopamine hit, video screen type
things. But you say we have to deliver. What do we have to deliver?
Well, no, I'm saying, that starts with, it's everything about sort of reasonable pricing, making sure you're compensating the bands and everything, but we're not pricing young kids out, right? Like fans to get out and giving them disincentives to come through. It's sort of, and then from a performance standpoint, it's just making sure you're on your P's and Q's and engaging and giving them that catharsis that where they're like, yo, this absolutely was something I cannot get on a screen, right? I know how much Meta is going to come out with their immersive VR, and AR like headphones to put me in a concert. While that's cool and it bridges the gap, it's still not the same as the human connection. Yeah. So I don't exactly have the answer, but we got to go back to sort of the roots and the question and the issue we're facing about attention economy.
Well, I can say something to that.
No, please, by all means. Yeah, take it from there.
The whole shop small thing, everybody I see, they have some place in their brain where they feel like shopping small is a good thing. But it's almost in the category of like charity. Like I'm doing a good noble favor for somebody. I'm a good guy. I'm shopping small. They're not thinking of it as a quality issue. And the thing that I've found is that when I was talking about that more intimate show, I'm not against big shows, but when those intimate shows, even open mics, there's a quality of the registration of that music in the person. When she's down on the floor dancing, I'm feeling like this is another human being. I feel more connection points, not only to her, but to the other people too, that I'm sharing that experience with, like the night that you're talking about. Yeah. Now, it's when you start eating healthy, there's a quality in that food. It's more complex. It's less processed to just favor your taste buds and your excitement. The famous thing of like, Mom, can we go to McDonald's? No, we have hamburgers at home, and it's like a bad burger on bread and all this stuff. But there also is quality at home if you have a strategy to make that quality at home. And this TED Talk that we'll put the link up to, she talks about educating the listeners and the community itself, the audience members, like you're saying, Ash, that you're not just doing someone a favor, because it's like, you see these posts and I agree with them. I think the other thing I'd add, Mike, to your selling merchandise is share the crap out of people's social media if they're playing out or anything. How hard is that?
Word of mouth too. Everyone in this room is a huge music nerd, and probably a lot of people listening to this or watching this right now are huge music nerds. And you get together with your friends and you tell each other about the cool thing that you heard, the cool song that came across the algorithm that you're just like, wait, that is really cool. Anyone who's known me for the last 2 years knows that I haven't shut the hell up about a Montreal band called Cola. I think they're the coolest thing I've ever heard. I got to see him at Johnny Brenda's, dragged a couple people with me to go see them, paid for the tickets myself because I'm just like, I just want you to come see it. And it was a great night. I think that's another thing we can do as fans with our like-minded, fan friends and the people in our world, our communities, is to never stop being excited and never stop trying to imbue that excitement into others.
And that's a form of leadership. And it doesn't
Sure.
mean I'm in charge, you're following me. Leadership to us is a hierarchy it's a continuum of a process. It's not a person. It's a process by which the leadership is seeking. First of all, it's got to be someplace good, because a lot of people confuse leadership with someone who's just leading. Look where some of our leaders are leading us. It's an awful place. I mean, you have got Hitler in the world. I mean, that's strong leadership to a very, very bad place. So leadership starts with, is this a good place? And that's one of the points of this podcast today, to say it is a healthy thing for communities to have a strong music. Doesn't mean music scene like we're so cool, we're so hip, but we understand the power of music, the importance of music, the diet. I call it our spiritual diet. It's part of our music. To me, is a spiritual diet. And yes, we're all musicians. The old sex, drugs, and rock and roll thing, that was part of it. I get it. But for me personally, it was never enough. That's all nice, but it was never what, for me, it was all about. That wasn't the end. The end was, I want to worship, like, in some way that I feel no misgivings about. Like, when I'm performing music, I feel like it's speaking in tongues with the band. I feel like the tempo is suspended, everything's suspended in us. That experience is something that you cannot get from a screen. You cannot get it. So that room you were in, you guys were in some sort of like, that's what I call like being close to some sort of like spiritual like experience together. I'm not trying to be corny, like, oh, God was there. But
it is communal. It's communal. And the core of what we understand is, organized religion or organized spirituality in just our culture, and I'm not talking about American culture, I'm talking about humanity, is gathering of people.
Yeah.
It's what you do when it's what you do when it gets dark.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about like emotion. I'm talking about like going back to ancient peoples. It's what you do when it gets dark. It's what you do during the fallow parts of the year.
Every culture.
Yeah,
it's an integral part.
It's a gathering, and if there's music and rhythm, it's primal.
And there's even physiological. I don't know
Absolutely.
if you guys are into exercise and stuff, but nitrous oxide has become this real big popular thing in exercising.
Oh, I've been to fish shows, so I know all about nitrous oxide.
We're talking about the same.
No, this
they've
is
got
actually,
the balloons outside the thing. The Philly Nitrous Mafia. That's a thing. Look it up.
This is actually in your physiology that helps. That controls your blood
Tell me more.
flow.
I'm interested.
Okay.
Anyway,
I want to see how I can do yoga and nitrous.
It's not something you can take. It has to do with the fact that actually when you hum, because you're breathing through your nose and not through your mouth, and there's something about the vibrations. Now, I'm not saying this is all 100% true, but that your body produces more nitric oxide, which is very good for it because it lowers your blood pressure and increases your blood flow. I've always found one of my pushbacks on, people having a laptop and just singing along to it or making a whole album in their laptop is, where's the physiology? Where's the calluses? Where's the heart rate that went up?
You still got to sing.
Yeah, well, the singing, I mean, that's good.
Yeah.
But, when you're a drummer and there's wood chips flying all over the place and you're hitting steel, and plastic and wood is flying, and the vibrations of the cymbal, you could still hear the cymbal going long after you've hit the thing.
Oh, sure.
And these waves are going through your body, and it's like there's a physiological effect. And I also I say to people, like, those chills I used to get from music, I feel like that was a physiological repercussion. I don't really get chills the same way. And I'm not dissing all modern music. I like a lot of it. Again, I like a lot of junk food, but I try to eat a lot of healthy food too.
Well, I don't think you should equate modern music to junk food, because
I know
our modern music was looked at disdainfully by the generations before us.
I believe you can look at AI music as junk food.
I can look at it that, but we weren't talking about that. The difference between me listening to Nirvana and my dad listening to Bob Dylan, like that's like both were people, But
100%.
I just think you have to be very careful when you talk about quote unquote modern music, because then you just sound like the old guy who's shaking his fist.
I agree. It sounds like that, but I'm careful to distinguish between what I'm talking about is when you are physiologically making music and making music together. It is a different registration in your spiritual state than when you are simply experiencing it through a screen. So that's an argument. I mean, you can make that argument. So I'm just saying, like, I don't care about blending the two. I love some of the new stuff. I do.
Yeah.
But I do think that it does get more closer to organic and the roots of being human. And actually, there's a question there about dehumanization. Maybe we could go into that.
Where I wanted to,
what I'm saying is that, Ash's grocery store, analogy I think is good. There are decent things. Like I brought up dark chocolate. A lot of people think, oh, chocolate's junk food. No, dark chocolate is one of the healthiest things you can eat. It's also highly processed. So to your point, Dan, just because it's processed doesn't mean it's junk.
Absolutely not.
But I think some of us kind of know the difference between something that's just purely indulgent. Even some of the AI songs that I got a lot of friends sending me AI songs. They're catchy. There's little catchy things going on in them.
I'm glad I don't have those friends.
Right. But something they're playing around the sandbox. But something in me, just like when you're eating like a Snickers bar for dinner, like it'll keep you alive, but something in you knows that it's a Snickers bar and it probably wasn't the best for you. You're not going to die instantly, but you probably can't eat a Snickers bar for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Does that mean a Snickers bar isn't a really delicious thing that can't be part of your diet? So in that case, I don't even really, to kind of steer out of the junk food thing, Dan, to not insult all modern music, is some modern music is dark chocolate. Some modern music is, a potato out of the ground. They still make it organically. Some is better, food that they've gotten the pesticides out and things. They have purified it a little bit. So it's all in the mix, but I think your diet analogy is the perfect one. Is like you have to kind of know when your diet is a little bit more balanced. And, I often say that human beings, we're still arguing about what to really eat, but you kind of know when you're eating something that's better for you and something that's worse for you, right? You kind of have an idea. If you're in the zone of the Mediterranean diet, you're probably going to be better off than if you're in the zone of eating out of vending machines like I was at one period of my life. By the way, as a musician, I think we all probably have. But anyway, so that's what I mean when I say, be leery of the junk food versus the good stuff. And, can we make more healthy food, healthy music? Can we do both?
Oh, sure. And I think that's a whole, that's a whole other argument and discussion to have right there. You'd have to really break down how, and we could all do that for hours, break down, how music is made, how it's marketed, how it's distributed out to the marketplace. And I think that's a whole other conversation to have right there about then what is, what we consider quote unquote healthier or not healthier. I don't know. I don't always track with the metaphor on food either, because when you get down to it at the end, food is a basic human necessity, and I'm going to maybe catch flack. Music is not. Art is not. It is not a necessity. You will not die without listening to music. Your life is...
You might go to war without it.
Your life is vastly improved in every single way by the embracing of art. I'm not just talking about music. I'm just talking about any artistic expression. Your life is embraced. But if you want to get down into the three basic needs of food, clothing, shelter, they are not the same. Yeah. We can argue that spiritual fulfillment increases quality of life, and I will absolutely agree with you on that and everything. But I always just have a hard time tracking with the food metaphor when we go too far down the rabbit hole on it, because I'm just like...
I think you may be misinterpreting at least how I'm applying it, which is to say that there are consumers who will prefer various offerings of food. There are people that are ardent supporters of farm to table, and they value the process. Yeah. They value the sort of organicism that comes along to it. And then there are consumers that have no problem running through McDonald's. And all I'm saying is, in the end, with the advent of sort of, especially with AI coming forth, which, by the way, is a whole other conversation, but there will be positive applications to AI music.
Oh, absolutely.
But just to say that there were people who don't care about the process. They just want to hear the end result. And if it hits and it moves them, it moves them. They don't care that it's McDonald's. They care that it's hungry and it tastes good. Yeah. Then there are people that are over here and want to eat from French Laundry. You know what I mean? And everything in between. That's the analogy I'm putting forward.
Good French Laundry reference right there. I kind of want to bring it down to, because we could spin our wheels on quality and preference and all that. But I kind of want to jump to the one of the last points that you made to us, John, is sort of in the roll up to this, because I really think it's important to leave with some actionable idea. What are things, and I think we can all sound off on this because we're all involved in a music community in one way or the other. What are things that people can do? I'm not even talking about artists. I'm talking about consumers, if we're going to stick with the marketplace words right there. What are things that us just simply as consumers of art and music, what can we do to maintain and strengthen the ecosystem, which is a term Ash used, which I like very much, and it's a term that I use as well when you're talking about a music community. What are things we can do? What are resources that we think can be provided better? What are ways that we think we can go about, taking in art, taking in music that offer a net positive to the ecosystem in general?
Well, and that you're not going to like this because this goes back to the food. What I'm saying is we look for this.
It's not liking or disliking.
Yeah, but we look for this special way to fix this, special way to fix that. What we're trying to do at the Citizen Body is realize a philosophy that pretty much applies to almost everything. And most people understand the moderation thing, right? But if you talk about what you just asked, which is how do we get music in a way that's quality, right?
What are practices that we can engage in?
Right. What are practices? So what are practices we can do if we want a better local economy? Well, we can shop more locally. We can buy food more locally. We can go to smaller enterprises, right? And then we engage socially when we do that because we're going into the store, because we're walking now, we're exercising, we're exchanging cash instead of giving a big bank a monopoly if we can, not pay on a card. That's also good, by the way. So all that stuff is about being smaller and more local, and it's called Shop Small. So I say this, one reason I wanted to meet today is to talk about what we call is, well, what about arting small? When you art small, you accomplish similar things. You accomplish, okay, I'm going to my local open mic. I might be walking further to go there, but, it's local, so I'm there. I'm meeting people in person, friends, family, different artists, new people, other musicians. I'm listening in person to get that physiological response, and I'm spending money locally. So it's these multiple things. And so, I guess, the question is, what can we do?
Well, it's not like what can we do to fix it all, but it's what are things, if there's someone listening to this, if there's someone who's engaging with this conversation, which God bless you, but if there's someone engaging with this and being okay, there is a vibrant music community, a scene where I live, but I work 45 hours a week. I have 2 kids. What are things what can I do? I'm not gonna on my shoulders save the whole thing, but what are some small things I can do? And I think you separated shop small and art small, but I think that if art is sold as a commodity, then shop absolutely comes into it because, like you said, you're spending money. You're paying for a concert ticket. You're paying for merch. You're paying the bartender because they're bringing you a drink.
They're very much the same thing is what my point is.
Yeah.
And that's why, and again, it's you've upped the quality, and the problem though is quality things can appear lesser quality. You don't like saying local.
Don't like the term local because it sounds less than. Right. It sounds it sounds farm team.
But it's actually, see, that's a perception on that word that's been it's been kind of appropriated. We actually, quality is a lot better. The interaction, the social interaction is better, local and small, and that might be something we have to reword or something. But that's what I'm saying is it's actually very, very simple because not only can you art small, but you can shop small, you can think small. We call it think big, act small, actually.
No, it's a good way.
Think big about the quality and the nutrients and what's in your ecosystem and your leadership, and then act small to actually get those big thoughts underway. And then I think people don't understand the power of en masse. And I say it like this, we have 350 million people in this country. If you got them all to just take one day and go support local music, just imagine the dramatic shock.
You think about record store day.
But record store day, right, is one day. But
it took demonstrable concerted effort to
It is.
make an initiative.
But
And it's national. It goes like all independent record stores everywhere, and the corporate ones as well also get involved.
I'm
Of
saying
course, they usurp it too, but yeah.
I'm saying
money to be
use
had.
that day to prove the power we have. So, look, what if you also went to a local show, an open mic, and did all these things like Dan and I have been talking about, and you guys have been doing your whole life, and then they said, you know what, let's do this once a month. Let's do this once a week, and let's get a portion. And again, the diet analogy, nothing's perfect, but a portion of our musical diet that is small and local, and then see how we kind of feel, and whether we're making friends, and whether we find. I found Adia Victoria, smaller. I found a band called Warpaint out of L.A. Now, I didn't find them locally, but I went to see them locally. I started following them. They're a smaller band, but these are like, I never had small bands. I mean, when I grew up, I didn't even have small bands.
You did. You just didn't know where they were.
Yeah, well, I meant I didn't have any I went to go see.
Yeah. I was lucky enough too, but I think that also maybe a little bit of our age difference right there, where I was lucky enough to be part of, punk communities and things like that, where that was the point.
Yeah. Right.
But again, not everyone is part of that, and those communities don't exist in every single town like a Walmart.
That's actually maybe a good segue into the the music being a healing kind of force.
Sure, and we can kind of land there because at some point we do have to land.
Yeah. You're watching a time, right?
Yeah. Well, no, but the idea, and I think we can even go around right here, and think we can even talk about just aspects of community, and because we're in Philadelphia and it's something I can speak to with expertise, I think everyone in this room can speak to with some amount of direct experience. An example you've seen in the local community, in the Philadelphia music community, of things where you're just that's someone doing something right. Whether it be an audience, whether it be a band, whether it be something part of the structure like a record label or a record store or something like that. But I'd be very interested in everyone to sound off very briefly on something they've seen out there, be that's what we're talking about right there. That's a good way. That's a positive way to grow a community.
Good question, Mike.
Well, I would say the thing that hit me the hardest that you guys spoke about is these experiences that you had when you went to your shows at Johnny Brenda's.
Yeah.
And I think it ties into what John was talking about with shopping small. And I think that it's experiences like that can lead to more experiences. That is a very positive experience that if it's spiritual, you're going to want more of. And I think we need to make an effort to, as John said, shop small when the opportunity is there to do so. And I don't always see those opportunities. There have been times when I have searched out where I can shop small and I just don't see it
absolutely.
anywhere.
Yeah.
And
that's
that's
what we're trying to
part
help
of the
with.
problem.
Yeah.
But I would say that is what hit me hardest from what you guys said. I think that those are great experiences. I think that can lead to more positive experiences. And I think that we as a community need to make an effort to make that happen. I think it is happening, but I don't know how sustainable it is. And I would like to, especially with
Absolutely.
with AI and
or just with the cost of everything being more now. It's more costly now for a smaller band to go out on the road. It's costly for a large band to go on the road too. Let no one think that the cost is only on the smaller bands. It costs Taylor Swift a lot of money going on tour too. The trick is that at that level, you can swallow that up and figure out a way to turn it around. At a smaller level, with a band in a 12-passenger van with their gear, the line between success and not success is very, very slim. And the same can be said for any small business owner or anything like that.
Yep.
The line between success and failure is very, very slim.
Yep.
I joke sometimes that half the restaurants I like are just 2 bad months away from just being they're gone.
Yeah.
A bad renegotiation of a lease for another 5 years. And you're just a lot of people are getting out of business right now because
the Grape's new lease was just too much for Scooter, and he closed his doors
Yeah,
as a result.
I should point out then that we are, in Philadelphia Music Studios on Cotton Street in Manayunk right now. We are just one block over.
1 block from the
One block from the
former
Grape-
Grape Street.
The Grape
Yep.
Room, which is an
Grape Room,
iconic,
yeah.
storied venue that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's one reason I wanted to bring everybody together here. But let me let you finish.
Yeah, Ash,
I'm gonna let you finish.
Oh, are you,
I'm good.
Ash, how about you? Like, what's a good example you've seen of late of like I said, something in a music community where you're like, okay, like, because I have these moments too where there are the little things will happen. I'll be like, okay, there might be hope for us. Like, after all, even if they're just these small moments right there, because I mean that's what keeps you going.
Yeah, as I'm jogging my sort of thoughts, no one sticks out in particular. It's not because they don't exist. I actually keep jumping from thought to thought to thought. But
Not Love Cartel and Bourbon Branch.
No.
That was a great show.
2022.
was a
No,
good,
but that was a great
that
show.
was a badass show. No, but I think I want to give a shout out to sort of the micro venue owners that are not necessarily music establishments, but that invite the music community into their establishments on a consistent basis to allow people to throw up rigs and do acoustic sets or do whatever and provide sort of a house of commons for people to come and experience this stuff. Because
alternative to larger venues.
yeah, exactly. And even at a micro level where, they may only be turning, $100 in sales at the coffee bar or something that night, but they've provided an upstart songwriter, a great little venue or 3 of them in one night that they can come out and have 15 people. That the labor that goes into that, or just sort of the onus and the responsibility on the venue owner to even host something like that, whether it be from a liability standpoint or just a sheer effort standpoint, isn't always obvious.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, you and I, we all know from even just trying to book your own show, the amount of effort that goes into it. Even if you have the apparatus there, like the former Bourbon and Branch, which was a very easy room to book, and that's what they offered. They were like, you would book a show and you would show up, but we still had to do the work. We had to get the bands together. We had to get everyone on board. We had to advertise for the show and all that. And yeah, there's a lot of effort that goes into even making these small like community level things to go off.
And I mean, all the venues that like host an open mic night, and not even venues. I'm sorry, that's not the word, because I do love the venues in the city. I think we have some amazing ones, but I mean
spaces, like
the spaces,
bookstores. There's coffee shops, like non like I call it the non-traditional venue.
There you go.
So you're getting outside of the bar club,
That's right.
World right there, and you're moving into coffee shop. There's a
Breweries.
Breweries. Yeah.
It allows artists to cut their teeth, earn their earn their skills. But so them, I think that's great. There's a lot of that going on. And then the other side, I wanted to sort of just back all the way up, and I was thinking through your question earlier, which is like sort of what can be done on the consumer side, and it's we've said it in many different ways here, but it's consistent patronage over time.
Yes.
Right. It's I love the one shots and stuff, but it's getting out there. It is patronizing, and that in the positive use of that word, and that doesn't necessarily going in person is probably the paramount thing you can do, right? It's that's everything we talked about earlier. But there are things short of that, for the person that has a family that can't get out all the time, and it is as simple as sort of making the extra effort to seek out and find new music from a local band you haven't heard and give them a try, or give them a listen, or liking and sharing. As dumb as it is, that is our sort of means of transaction in the music community these days. It is social capital. Social capital.
Yeah.
So, and that doesn't cost anything. That's just effort and co-signing, and that means a lot. I know, even as an old head who, my better days are behind me in the music industry. I remember vividly thinking how thankful I was that people would share something or like it or whatever, And I say, love me, hate me, just don't ignore me. That
No,
is
it's
the
true.
worst.
It's true.
For a musician, that isolation is the worst. So.
I think John and I have both like very much like sort of given our examples already of like some really great moments in a music community. And I think for ours, like come from engaging with a live show, from seeking something out and going to it and being like, And for me, I'm always trying to drag a couple people along
don't
with
just
me.
take what's force fed you, especially with the algorithms, because it's, I forget, I think I sent you guys the video where they had Drake eating his own tail. It's becoming like, that you're getting so much similar stuff in algorithms that if you never venture out of the algorithm, you're not seeking. And my whole thing about spirituality is what I felt liberated was, and why everything ties together for me. If your spirituality and philosophy is good, it makes everything in life better. And music's a piece of that. So for me, it was like, well, wait a second, not knowing and accepting that you don't know makes you seek and explore. So every conversation I'm having, I'm exploring. How do you think? What do you think? Oh, can I learn something new? We realize it's such a mystery, the solutions to all these problems we have. It's so grand and so big. All we could ever really get is hope we put some more puzzle pieces in it, and that's enough, because then you feel like it's true. It's honest. Like you're just trying to, you're not adopting some belief, I'm right, I'm the guy, I got all the answers, and then forcing to everybody else. That's never worked. Look at history, look at religions, look at even ideologies. Like it's just this unending war. It's literally like a self-perpetuating flywheel war. But when you're constantly learning, you start to feel like, okay, wait, I'm being force-fed whatever I'm being force-fed, and it's just for economic reasons. I don't believe there's some grand master like trying to orchestrate it all into a grand strategic plan, but I do believe it's economically driven.
Yeah.
And I believe that power is concentrated economically and politically. But so with the music, it's like you realize that this is all coming at you. I listen to music when I work out, and then I go to band camp, and I say, let me try to listen to something brand new. I'm not going to love it, but it's an exercise, and it's sort of it's the same reason I fast. I fast once in a while to remind myself what conscious decision to do something feels like versus compulsive habit, because it's not always a good habit that's compulsive. Sometimes it's a bad habit. I'm just eating because this is what time I normally eat. I'm just having the coffee because this is what I do. So to me, the fasting is like, okay, I'm going to consciously break from the algorithm and everything that's just happening compulsively in my music world, and I'm going to go and seek something. And I have found at least 2 or 3 different acts, and I also think it helps your creative process too.
Absolutely.
Because now you're getting outside of like those same pathways, your comfort configuration, I call it, that you're always traveling. So I would say the seeking is the really important part.
I think, absolutely. Yeah. Always be curious.
Yeah.
I've always said, I'll know I'm dead when I'm not curious anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm still curious, so I'm not dead yet. Because as we get older and our tastes calcify and life gets in the way, the partnering off, the family, the career, and all that, part of you disappears. That 20-something version of you disappears. Some of those things that disappear are great. I'm glad so many 20-something aspects of me have disappeared, but I do miss a more voracious appetite and the bandwidth to take it all in. But John, I think that you brought it to a close really well right there, which is the idea of always seeking, like always looking, and then the only thing I would add to that is and always trying to drag a few like-minded people along with you, people who are equally open people over with you. I think that's at its core the best thing that we can do to grow a music community and to grow an art community and to grow sort of a philosophical community that thinks about things like that.
Yeah, and the beauty of it for me is you don't have to be like, oh man, now I got to grow the music community, I got to grow an ecosystem. Oh man, now I got to shop small, now I got to vote small, now I got to do this small. That. No, it's all the same. It's all the same process. It's the process of choosing quality over quantity and not just simple convenience over something that's constructively building. We have the power to reinforce positive reinforcement of the kind of society we want to see. And I think the same process for shopping, it even ties right into the music. It's like you're doing both at once. There's a coffee shop opening up on Ridge that we're trying to, I talked to Mike, his neighbor, has a coffee shop. We're talking about getting an open mic going there.
Nice.
And I know open mics.
That's building community right there, yeah.
Open mics ain't easy. I mean, they die off sometimes and all that, but you got to go for it,
Yeah.
And you never know. There's a Roxborough Writers Group that I'm talking about. Maybe he wants to have all these, he's going to have a comedy night. He's going to have maybe a poetry or a spoken word night. So, who knows what's going to ultimately come of it, but it's the process of knowing, hey, that's not only helping the music scene, but that's helping the shop small by helping keep a local business in business. And you're doing it all automatically according to a philosophy of think big and act small. So just plug it into your music, plug it into everything else you do. And I know it's not easy. I would be remiss if I didn't cite. I know Ash and I have talked specifically about times when he's attempted to shop small, and he's come back with horror stories.
Well-
and but once you calibrate to the fact that it's not always going to be superior, you know, to Starbucks, it's not always going to be superior to, you know, your Amazon experience. But you have to start recognizing what is the cost of convenience and, you know, coolness and like really polished product versus it's weird. Like, you know how you develop like a liking for like greasy spoons? It's not the best
No,
food.
can't say I've ever had that in my
You don't go to any diners that are like greasy spoon, considered greasy spoon?
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah,
that like a term
that's-
of art?
yeah, it's a term of art.
I was like, I've never longed after
you
a
thought you
greasy
were taking
spoon
it literally
in my
Yeah.
life. Yeah.
No, it just means like a
a
type
diner.
it's an old school diner like
got
50s they call it greasy spoon, right? So what I'm saying though is like you're not going for like the ultimate food. You're going for like actually the imperfection of the food becomes like a communal sort of like it sort of like keeps everybody on the same level.
Bob's Diner.
Yeah,
There you
Bob's
go.
Diner.
Yeah, yeah.
And so we're here in Manayunk. We've named Bob's Diner. The coffee shop opening up in Ridge is called Sweet Java. We got Grape
Sweet
Room.
Java's also got a liquor license. You can get
Sweet Java
about
has a
that?
liquor license, so you
Coffee.
can not only go and listen.
Even
to,
sweeter.
Fine establishment.
So you know that is what we're ending with. Is like you keep seeking and you have a mindset that you are part of this solution. Like all of us, not just the musicians, not just the studio owners and practice rehearsal space owners, the podcast guys, or the attorneys, and all of us being musicians. Like it's not just for us; it's for everybody. So it comes into like when you decide whether you're going to go see a movie or whether you're going to go see, whatever else. I just go out and just drink, which is fine. Believe me, I understand. But throw in a little music,
Why not?
And there's
Why not?
places where you can do like
You can
a
do it all.
quieter. Yeah,
You can do it all.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And if you seek, you can find in Philadelphia probably death metal. You can find hip hop. You can find
everything.
You
It's
can
all
find
there.
everything.
It's
Folk.
all there.
So, on that
John,
note, yeah.
Thanks for having us all here, man.
Yeah,
I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thank you for doing the moderation, and all you guys really. I know that you, and this is part of the problem. Is it's a real effort to physically get together, but that's one reason I wanted to do it is to prove it can be done, and I think that this actually came out really nice. I mean, I think that we went into some territory that I didn't even expect.
Can we do this via Zoom next time? My subscription, I'm paying all that money. No, just kidding.
That
Ash has
its
the
place.
longest commute out of all of us, so I'm 100% in
Get to hang with
sympathy.
the homies, man.
Also, we're about to get the beginnings of the of ramifications of Hurricane Debbie right now, so I'm
Yeah.
sure all of us are like secretly thinking like, I should probably get home.
Yeah, in case you're watching and listening to
Probably get
this
to the
and you
bars,
wonder
right?
when it is, this is right around that time. It's beginning of August,
Early August.
2024. Kamala
Earth-
Harris just took over as the
Earth,
candidate.
Earth,
all that
planet
kind of
Earth.
stuff.
Earth, Milky Way galaxy.
But that's
yeah.
so you know. And Mike, really special thanks, man. I know this was a
Yeah.
lot of setting up the mics and the sound and
No problem at all.
You're
I
running
appreciate
away
you.
from your other duties in your business. We appreciate it.
I appreciate you too.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Stay tuned for more later.